Zast time to prove that she could belong in this world too. Ode never imagined, everything. Olivia had always been different from the other students at Eastwood High School. She wasn't part of their world of expensive clothes, fancy gadgets, or weekend trips to the beach. She was the daughter of the school janitor, someone who worked quietly behind the scenes to keep the school clean and running smoothly. While the other students socialized and showed off their talents, Olivia kept to herself, quietly walking the hallways and doing what she had to do to help her dad. Her father, who had worked at Eastwood for years, was well liked by the staff and students, but Olivia had never felt like she belonged in their world. She would often hear whispers in the hallways about her, the janitor's daughter, and how different she was from the other students. Most of the time, she just kept her head down, avoided the stairs, and stayed in the background. The only time she felt truly alive was when she was alone, listening to her father's old records of classical music. There was something about the violins, the way they soared and weaved through the air, that captured her heart. But Olivia never thought she would be the one to play such an instrument. That was something for the rich kids, the ones who had the time and money to learn. One day, during a lunch break, the teachers gathered in the staff room. They were discussing the upcoming talent showcase that the school was hosting for the students. It was meant to highlight the musical talents of the students, and there was a lot of talk about which student might perform the best. Most of the names mentioned were of students who had been taking music lessons since they were young, students from wealthy families with private tutors and expensive instruments. The teachers debated on who might win the showcase, and their conversation quickly turned to who could be the wild card of the event, the student who might surprise everyone. As the teachers chatted, one of them, Mr. Reynolds, the music teacher, joked about the possibility of a student who was never on anyone's radar. "What if we asked the janitor's daughter to play the violin?" He laughed. "Could you imagine how that would go?" The other teachers laughed along, thinking it was a funny idea. "Maybe she'll surprise us," one of them said, chuckling. "She probably doesn't even know how to hold a violin properly." The joke was lighthearted, and no one truly thought anything would come of it. But in the back of their minds, there was a lingering curiosity. Mrs. Collins, the music teacher who had been quiet during the conversation, couldn't help but feel intrigued by the idea. There was something about the thought of Olivia, the quiet janitor's daughter, standing in front of everyone and playing an instrument, that sparked a small glimmer of interest in her mind. Mrs. Collins had been teaching music for years, and she had seen many students come and go. Some had incredible talent, but others were just going through the motions. It wasn't uncommon for a student from a wealthy family to be pushed into music lessons, while the ones from modest backgrounds were often overlooked. She had never considered giving Olivia a chance before, but now, after hearing the idea from Mr. Reynolds, she wondered, what if she could make something extraordinary happen? The very next day, Mrs. Collins found herself walking down the hallway, searching for Olivia. She spotted her near the back of the school, sweeping the floor and humming softly to herself. Olivia didn't notice her at first, but when she looked up, she was surprised to see the music teacher standing in front of her. "Hi, Olivia," Mrs. Collins greeted her with a warm smile. "How are you?" Olivia hesitated for a moment. She wasn't used to teachers talking to her outside of class. "I'm good, thank you." "I was wondering," Mrs. Collins continued, her voice gentle. "Have you ever thought about learning how to play the violin?" Olivia blinked, surprised by the question. "The violin?" she repeated. "I don't know anything about it." "Well, what if I gave you the chance to learn?" Mrs. Collins said with a kind smile. "There's a talent showcase coming up soon, and I think it would be fun to see you perform." Olivia felt her face heat up. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But I'm not a musician. I wouldn't even know where to start." Mrs. Collins leaned in slightly, her voice more earnest now. "I've seen something in you, Olivia. You're hardworking. You have a quiet strength, and you might surprise yourself if you give it a try. Plus, no one would expect it." Olivia wasn't sure what to think. She had always dreamed of playing the violin, but it seemed impossible. Her family didn't have the money for such luxuries, and she certainly didn't have the time to learn an instrument on top of her responsibilities. But the idea of proving the teachers wrong, of showing them that she could do something unexpected, made her hesitate for only a moment before she nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll give it a try." Mrs. Collins's eyes lit up. "That's the spirit. We'll start with the basics and we'll see where it takes you." Olivia agreed, though part of her felt nervous. She wasn't sure if she could do this. She was used to sweeping floors and cleaning classrooms, not performing on stage. But something about Mrs. Collins's belief in her made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something different. The next few days were a blur of new experiences for Olivia. After school, she would walk to the music room, where Mrs. Collins would patiently guide her through the basics of playing the violin. It was difficult at first. Olivia's hands felt clumsy as she tried to hold the bow properly and press the strings. The sounds that came from the violin were nothing like the smooth melodies she had imagined while listening to her father's records. But every time she struggled, Mrs. Collins was there, offering gentle encouragement. "You're doing great," she would say. "Just keep going. It's a slow process, but you're learning." Olivia practiced every chance she got. She stayed after school for extra lessons, sometimes staying up late at night trying to get the finger placement right, or the bow to glide smoothly across the strings. She knew she wasn't good yet, but there was something about the violin that kept her going. It wasn't just the sound of the music. It was the way she felt when she played. There was a freedom in it, a way to express herself without words. As the days passed, Olivia's skills slowly began to improve. Her fingers became more confident on the strings, and the notes she played began to sound more musical. But the pressure of performing in front of the entire school was still on her mind. She could hear the laughter of the teachers in her head, their joke about her playing the violin, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was just setting herself up for failure. Still, Olivia didn't let the doubt stop her. She kept practicing day after day, determined to prove herself. She didn't want to let anyone down, especially Mrs. Collins, who had given her this chance when no one else had. Little did she know, this simple request from Mrs. Collins would soon lead to something much bigger than she could ever have imagined. The first few weeks of Olivia's lessons felt like a roller coaster ride. Some days she felt like she was making real progress, her fingers gliding over the strings with surprising ease. On other days, she struggled to hit the right notes, and the sound from the violin seemed more like a screech than music. There were times when she felt so frustrated that she wanted to put the instrument down and walk away. But something always stopped her: her determination to prove herself. At school, the news about Olivia taking violin lessons had spread quickly. It was the talk of the faculty lounge, and even some of the students began whispering about the janitor's daughter and her new pursuit. Some of them didn't believe it. "There's no way she can actually play," they would say. "It's just a joke." Others, however, were curious. Maybe, just maybe, Olivia would surprise them all. Every time she walked through the hallways, Olivia could feel the stares from the students. She wasn't used to the attention. The wealthy kids who filled the school with their designer clothes and expensive gadgets would glance at her as she passed by. Some of them would smirk, probably thinking that she was just a girl who didn't belong in their world. But Olivia kept her head up. She didn't have time for their opinions. She had a violin to practice, and she was determined to learn. After school, she would walk straight to the music room, her heart beating in her chest with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Mrs. Collins was always waiting for her, a reassuring smile on her face. Despite Olivia's doubts, the teacher never wavered in her belief that the girl had something special. She was patient and encouraging, offering tips on how to improve her posture, how to hold the bow, how to listen for the right notes. Olivia found comfort in the way Mrs. Collins never made her feel inadequate. Even when Olivia played something that sounded terrible, Mrs. Collins would simply nod and say, "We'll get it right next time." One day, as Olivia was finishing a particularly rough practice session, Mrs. Collins pulled her aside. "Olivia," she said, "I want you to try something different today. I know you've been focused on the technical side, and that's important, but I also want you to focus on the feeling, on the emotion behind the music. When you play, think about what the music means to you. Don't just play the notes, feel them." Olivia looked at her teacher, unsure. "But I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a musician. I don't know how to make it sound beautiful." Mrs. Collins smiled gently. "You don't have to know everything yet. Just play what's in your heart. Trust yourself." That night, as Olivia sat in her room practicing alone, she decided to try something different. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, imagining the music in her mind before she even began. She played a few simple notes, not worrying about whether they were perfect. Instead, she let the sound fill the room, letting the emotions of the music take over. For the first time, She wasn't worried about making mistakes. She was just playing, feeling the music in her soul. To her surprise, the sound was different. It was softer, more melodic. She wasn't perfect, but she was more in tune with the music than ever before. It wasn't just about hitting the right notes, it was about expressing something deeper. The violin wasn't just an instrument. It was a way for her to share her emotions, to communicate without words. The next day at school, Olivia walked into the music room with a renewed sense of purpose. She was still nervous, but there was something inside her that had changed. Mrs. Collins could see it right away. "You look different today," she said. "What happened?" "I don't know," Olivia replied, a little shy but also excited. I felt the music yesterday. It was like I could hear it in my heart." Mrs. Collins nodded. "That's it, Olivia. That's the key. Now let's see if we can take that feeling and turn it into something beautiful." Olivia's playing improved steadily over the next few weeks. She was no longer just learning how to play the violin. She was learning how to connect with it. The other students, who had once thought her pursuit was a joke, began to take notice. Some of them, like Mia and Ethan, watched Olivia practice during lunch breaks and after school, clearly intrigued by her progress. They were the type of students who had always been at the top of the music program. But even they were impressed by Olivia's determination. One afternoon, after Olivia had finished her practice, Ethan, who was a talented violinist himself, approached her. "Hey, Olivia," he said, his tone friendly but a little hesitant. "I heard you're playing at the showcase. That's pretty cool." Olivia looked up, surprised that he was talking to her. "Yeah, I guess so. I'm still not sure I'll be ready in time, though." "You will be," Ethan said with a smile. "I can tell. You've been practicing a lot. If you need any tips, I can help you out." Olivia felt a warm feeling in her chest. She had always thought of Ethan as one of the elite students, someone whose talent seemed effortless. For him to offer help felt like a small victory. "Thanks," she said softly. "I might take you up on that." The days leading up to the talent showcase were a blur of practice sessions, self-doubt, and moments of triumph. Olivia had come a long way since the first lesson, but there was still a part of her that wondered if she was truly ready. She had never performed in front of anyone before, let alone in front of the entire school. What if she messed up? What if they all laughed at her? Just like the teachers had joked in the beginning. But every time those thoughts crept into her mind, she reminded herself of something her father had told her when she was younger. "You don't have to be perfect. Just do your best, and that's enough." The night before the showcase, Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, her violin resting in her lap. She ran her fingers over the strings, thinking about everything she had been through to get here. She wasn't the best violinist in the school. She didn't have the years of training that some of the other students had, but she had something they didn't: the will to keep going, no matter how hard it got. She had come this far not because of talent alone, but because of her determination to push through the doubts and the fears. And tomorrow, when she stepped onto that stage, she was going to give it everything she had. The day of the talent showcase finally arrived, and Olivia was a bundle of nerves. The morning was cloudy, and the weight of anticipation hung in the air, as if everyone in the school was waiting for something big to happen. Olivia's heart raced as she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the simple black dress she had borrowed from Mrs. Collins, who had insisted she look her best for the performance. It was a far cry from the designer clothes the other students wore, but Olivia didn't care. She just wanted to make it through the day. Her father had promised to come, though he had to take a break from work to be there. He didn't ask for time off very often, but today was different. He'd always believed in her, even when no one else did. He'd been there for every practice session, patiently watching from the doorway of her room as she stumbled through new pieces of music. He had seen her struggle, but he had also seen her determination. Now he would be in the audience, and that gave her a small sense of comfort. As she walked through the hallways on her way to the music room, she could hear the buzz of excited voices. Students were gathering in the auditorium, preparing for the event. The teachers were busy organizing everything behind the scenes. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. She didn't feel ready. She had practiced, yes, but she still wasn't sure if she could perform in front of an audience. The thought of making a mistake in front of so many people made her stomach turn. When she arrived at the music room, Mrs. Collins was already there, waiting with a warm smile. "Olivia, you look wonderful," she said, her eyes shining with pride. You're going to do great. I know it. Olivia nodded, though she didn't feel very confident. I don't know, Mrs. Collins. What if I mess up? What if they all laugh at me? Mrs. Collins walked over and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Olivia, you've come so far. This isn't about being perfect. It's about showing everyone what you're capable of. You've put in the work. Trust yourself. Trust the music. That's all Olivia needed to hear. The words calmed her, and she felt a small wave of confidence wash over her. She wasn't going to worry about what anyone else thought. She was going to play for herself, for the love of the music. For her father. The time came for the showcase to begin. Olivia stood backstage waiting for her turn. The nervous energy around her was palpable, but she tried to block it out. She closed her eyes and focused on the music in her mind. The piece she had chosen was one of the simplest she had learned, but it was also one of the most meaningful to her. It was a piece she'd played many times in the privacy of her room, a piece that had helped her connect with the violin in a way nothing else had. When she heard her name being called, Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She walked slowly onto the stage, the bright lights blinding her for a moment. The auditorium was packed, and all the eyes in the room seemed to be on her. The students who had once looked at her with curiosity or doubt were now silent, waiting to see what she would do. Her father was sitting in the front row, his face filled with pride. That was all she needed to see. She took her place at the center of the stage, feeling the weight of the violin in her hands. The bow felt strangely heavy and her fingers trembled slightly. But she closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and remembered what Mrs. Collins had told her. This was her moment. She wasn't going to let fear stop her. Olivia lifted the bow and placed it on the strings. The first note was tentative, almost hesitant. But as she continued, the music started to flow more naturally. She felt the vibrations of the violin through her chest, and with each note, the nerves seemed to melt away. She wasn't playing for anyone else. She was playing for herself, for the joy of the music. As the piece progressed, Olivia began to lose herself in the rhythm, letting the music take over. She could see the faces in the audience, but they didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was the sound of the violin, the way the music wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Halfway through the piece, something unexpected happened. Olivia hit a wrong note, one that didn't sound right. The familiar feeling of panic crept up in her chest. But instead of stopping or stumbling, she took a deep breath and kept going. She didn't let that mistake define her performance. She adjusted and kept playing, letting the music carry her forward. She realized then that making a mistake wasn't the end of the world. It was just a part of the process. The audience, which had been silent at first, began to respond. A few people smiled, nodding along with the music. Others leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the emotion in Olivia's playing. As she reached the final notes of the piece, she felt a surge of pride. She had done it. She had played through the nerves, the mistakes, and the doubts. She had given everything she had, and it felt incredible. When the last note hung in the air, Olivia lowered the violin, her hand still trembling slightly. The auditorium was silent for a moment. Then slowly, the audience erupted into applause. Olivia's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and joy. She had done it. She had proven herself not just to the audience, but to herself. She looked down at her father, who was standing and clapping, his face beaming with pride. He gave her a thumbs up, and she couldn't help but smile in return. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she truly belonged. Not because of her background or her circumstances, but because of her talent, her hard work, and her passion for the music. As she walked off the stage, Mrs. Collins was waiting for her with a big smile. You were amazing, Olivia. I knew you had it in you. Olivia felt a rush of gratitude. Thank you for believing in me, Mrs. Collins. I don't think I can. The rest of the evening went by in a blur. Olivia had been nervous about the performance, but once it was over, she felt lighter, freer than she had in a long time. The teachers who had once joked about her taking part in the showcase now looked at her with new respect. She wasn't just the janitor's daughter anymore. She was a talented musician, someone who had the courage to step outside the shadows and show the world what she could do. When the event ended, Olivia's father walked up to her, his arm around her shoulders. You were incredible, Liv. I'm so proud of you. Olivia smiled up at him. Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you. In the days that followed, Olivia felt different. She had changed in ways she couldn't quite explain. She wasn't just the girl who swept the floors anymore. She was someone who had shown up, who had taken a chance, and who had succeeded. And while she knew she had a long way to go in her musical journey, she also knew that this was just the beginning. After the showcase, things started to change for Olivia. The teachers, who had once seen her as nothing more than the janitor's daughter, began to look at her differently. They had always known she was hardworking, but now they saw that she had something more. She had talent. The students who had quietly whispered behind her back now nodded in her direction with a newfound respect. It was as if the walls that had always separated her from them had begun to crumble, and Olivia felt like she was slowly stepping into a new world. She still wasn't part of their elite group, the ones who had private tutors or attended expensive music camps. But that didn't matter anymore. She had proven herself, and in her heart that was enough. What mattered most was that she had found something she loved, something that made her feel truly alive. The violin had become her escape, her way of expressing everything she couldn't put into words. As the weeks passed, Olivia continued to practice, determined to get better. She worked with Mrs. Collins after school, going over the pieces she had learned and tackling new ones. Olivia was no longer just playing to prove others wrong. She was playing because she wanted to, because the music felt like a part of her. The sound of the violin had become her voice, a voice that had been silent for too long. One afternoon, as she was finishing a practice session in the music room, Mrs. Collins approached her with an idea. "Olivia, I've been thinking," she began, her voice thoughtful. "I know you've been practicing hard, and I can see how much you've improved. How would you like to participate in the regional music competition coming up next month?" Olivia's eyes widened. "A competition? I don't know. I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that." "You don't have to be the best to compete," Mrs. Collins said gently. "It's about pushing yourself, about seeing how far you've come. I believe in you, Olivia. You have the potential to do something amazing." The idea of competing scared Olivia. She had never imagined herself in a competition, let alone one with so many talented musicians. But as she thought about it, she realized that this might be another chance to challenge herself, to see just how far her love for the violin could take her. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice quiet but thoughtful. Deep down she knew that if she didn't take the opportunity, she would always wonder what might have happened. Over the next few days, Olivia spent hours practicing, preparing for the competition. It wasn't easy. The pressure of competing weighed heavily on her, but she also felt a sense of excitement. She was about to take a step into a world she had always admired from the sidelines. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she knew she had to try. As the competition date drew closer, Olivia started to feel the weight of her decision. She still had doubts. What if she messed up in front of so many people? What if she was laughed at again? But each time the doubts crept into her mind. She reminded herself of the promise she had made to herself after the talent showcase, that she would never let fear stop her from following her dreams. On the day of the competition, Olivia woke up with a sense of nervous energy that she couldn't shake. Her father was already getting ready, eager to accompany her to the event. He had promised to support her no matter what happened, and Olivia was grateful for his unwavering belief in her. They drove to the competition venue, a large auditorium filled with students and their families. The atmosphere was different from the showcase. This was a more formal event with an air of seriousness. Olivia felt out of place among the other competitors who seemed so confident and, when she finished, the room was polished. She watched them warm up with their teachers, their violins gliding effortlessly over the strings. They all looked like they belonged here. She, on the other hand, still felt like an outsider. When it was her turn to perform, Olivia stepped onto the stage with trembling hands. The auditorium was filled with faces, some familiar and some unfamiliar, but all of them were watching her. She set the violin under her chin, the weight of it familiar, but the pressure to perform was suffocating. For a moment, she wanted to run off the stage and hide in the back, away from the eyes that were judging her. But she remembered her father's words, "You don't have to be perfect. Just do your best." With that thought, Olivia took a deep breath and began to play. The first few notes were shaky, but she found her rhythm. Slowly, the nerves began to fade and she let the music take over. She focused on the violin, on the melody that filled the air, and for a brief moment everything else disappeared. It was just her and the music, and that was enough. As she played, Olivia could feel the emotion of the music pouring out of her. She wasn't playing to win a competition. She was playing because it was her passion, her way of connecting with the world. The audience was still, their eyes fixed on her as the sound of the violin filled the auditorium. Olivia lost herself in the music, her fingers moving effortlessly over the strings, the bow gliding across them in smooth, fluid motions. And for a moment, then slowly the audience began to clap. Olivia stood there, her heart pounding in her chest, unsure of what had just happened. Had she done well? Had she made a mistake? She couldn't tell. But the applause was real, and it filled her with a sense of accomplishment she had never felt before. As she walked off the stage, Mrs. Collins met her with a proud smile. "That was incredible, Olivia," she said. "You played with so much heart." Olivia smiled, her eyes still wide with surprise. "Thank you, Mrs. Collins. I didn't think I could do it." "You did more than that," Mrs. Collins said softly. "You showed everyone what you're capable of." The competition didn't matter to Olivia anymore. Whether she won or lost was irrelevant. What mattered was that she had stepped out of her comfort zone, that she had faced her fears and overcome them. She had played for herself, and that was all that mattered. Later that day, after the competition was over, Olivia found her father waiting for her in the lobby. He gave her a big hug. "You were amazing, Liv. I'm so proud of you." Olivia smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." As they left the venue, Olivia felt lighter than she had in a long time. She knew that this was just the beginning. She had found something she loved, something that gave her a sense of purpose. She didn't know where her journey would take her, but she knew one thing for sure. She was never going to let fear or doubt hold her back again. After the competition, Olivia felt as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had pushed herself beyond what she thought was possible, and the sense of accomplishment filled her with a quiet pride. The nerves that had once controlled her, that had made her second-guess every decision, were now replaced with something new, a quiet confidence in herself. She hadn't won the competition, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she had stepped onto that stage and played from her heart. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she truly belonged. Her classmates, who had once treated her like an outsider, began to look at her with a different kind of respect. They no longer saw her as just the janitor's daughter. Olivia had become a part of something bigger than herself, something that didn't have to do with wealth or status, but with passion, dedication, and hard work. Slowly, the whispers in the hallways turned into friendly conversations. Some students even approached her, asking about her practice routine or offering to help her with different pieces. It was a small change, but it was enough to make Olivia feel like she had finally found her place. One afternoon, as Olivia was finishing up her practice session, Mrs. Collins came up to her with a smile. "Olivia, I have some exciting news. You've been selected to play in the school's winter concert next month." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. "The concert? But I'm still learning. I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that." "You're ready," Mrs. Collins said with confidence. "You've made incredible progress, and I know you'll do great. It's a chance to show everyone how far you've come." The thought of performing in front of an even larger audience was daunting, but Olivia couldn't deny that she was excited. The opportunity to play on stage again, to share the music she had worked so hard to perfect, filled her with a sense of anticipation. She wasn't the same girl who had been too afraid to take. In the talent showcase, she was stronger now, more confident in her abilities. As the winter concert approached, Olivia practiced more than ever. She spent hours in the music room perfecting her piece. The piece she had chosen was challenging, but it was one that had become personal to her. It was a beautiful, emotional composition that captured everything she had felt over the past few months: the struggle, the self-doubt, and the eventual triumph. She had poured herself into it, and now she was ready to share it with the world. The night of the concert, Olivia felt the familiar nerves creep up again. The auditorium was packed, and she could feel the buzz of excitement in the air. She was standing backstage waiting for her turn, when her father appeared beside her. His eyes were filled with pride, and he gave her a reassuring smile. "You've got this, Liv. I'm so proud of you." Olivia smiled back, her nerves calming slightly. "Thanks, Dad. I'll do my best." When it was finally her turn, Olivia stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The bright lights momentarily blinded her, but she focused on the violin in her hands. The audience was silent, waiting for her to begin. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and let the music take over. The first notes flowed from her fingers, steady and sure. As the music filled the auditorium, Olivia let go of the nerves that had plagued her earlier. She was no longer thinking about the audience or her fears. She was lost in the music, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm, her fingers dancing across the strings with ease. The sound of the violin filled the room, and for a brief moment everything else disappeared. It was just her and the music, and that was all that mattered. As the piece came to an end, Olivia held the final note for a moment, letting the sound linger in the air. When she finished, the auditorium was silent for a beat, and then the applause came, louder and more genuine than she had ever expected. Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had faced her fears and played with everything she had. After the concert, Olivia was surrounded by her classmates and teachers, all offering congratulations. She was grateful for their kind words, but it was her father's smile that meant the most to her. He had been there for every step of her journey, and now she had given him something to be proud of. "You were amazing, Liv," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I knew you could do it." Olivia hugged him tightly. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. Thank you for always believing in me." As they left the concert, Olivia felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced before. She had come a long way since the days when she felt invisible, when she thought she didn't belong in a world filled with privilege and opportunity. She had found her voice through the violin, and now she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have the music. In the weeks that followed, Olivia continued to grow as a musician. She joined the school's music ensemble, performing with other students who shared her love of music. The teachers continued to support her, and Mrs. Collins encouraged her to audition for more competitions and performances. Olivia didn't know where this path would lead, but she was no longer afraid to follow it. She knew that her journey with the violin was just beginning, and that filled her with hope for the future. One afternoon, as Olivia was leaving school, Mrs. Collins stopped her in the hallway. "Olivia, I have an idea. There's a music school in the city that offers scholarships to promising musicians. I think you could be a great fit." "What do you think?" Olivia's heart skipped a beat. A scholarship? The thought of studying music at a prestigious school seemed like a dream, something she had never dared to imagine. But now it didn't seem so impossible. She had already proven to herself that she could do things she once thought were out of reach. Maybe this was the next step in her journey. "I'll think about it," Olivia said, her voice filled with hope. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she had the power to shape it. As she walked home that evening, the familiar weight of the violin case in her hand, Olivia looked up at the sky. The stars were beginning to twinkle above, and for the first time in her life she felt like anything was possible. She had come so far, and there was so much more ahead of her. No matter what, she knew that she would always have the music to guide her. In the talent showcase, she was stronger now, more confident in her abilities. As the winter concert approached, Olivia practiced more than ever. She spent hours in the music room perfecting her piece. The piece she had chosen was challenging, but it was one that had become personal to her. It was a beautiful, emotional composition that captured everything she had felt over the past few months: the struggle, the self-doubt, and the eventual triumph. She had poured herself into it, and now she was ready to share it with the world. The night of the concert, Olivia felt the familiar nerves creep up again. The auditorium was packed, and she could feel the buzz of excitement in the air. She was standing backstage waiting for her turn, when her father appeared beside her. His eyes were filled with pride, and he gave her a reassuring smile. "You've got this, Liv. I'm so proud of you." Olivia smiled back, her nerves calming slightly. "Thanks, Dad. I'll do my best." When it was finally her turn, Olivia stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The bright lights momentarily blinded her, but she focused on the violin in her hands. The audience was silent, waiting for her to begin. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and let the music take over. The first notes flowed from her fingers, steady and sure. As the music filled the auditorium, Olivia let go of the nerves that had plagued her earlier. She was no longer thinking about the audience or her fears. She was lost in the music, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm, her fingers dancing across the strings with ease. The sound of the violin filled the room, and for a brief moment everything else disappeared. It was just her and the music, and that was all that mattered. As the piece came to an end, Olivia held the final note for a moment, letting the sound linger in the air. When she finished, the auditorium was silent for a beat, and then the applause came, louder and more genuine than she had ever expected. Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had faced her fears and played with everything she had. After the concert, Olivia was surrounded by her classmates and teachers, all offering congratulations. She was grateful for their kind words, but it was her father's smile that meant the most to her. He had been there for every step of her journey, and now she had given him something to be proud of. "You were amazing, Liv," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I knew you could do it." Olivia hugged him tightly. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. Thank you for always believing in me." As they left the concert, Olivia felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced before. She had come a long way since the days when she felt invisible, when she thought she didn't belong in a world filled with privilege and opportunity. She had found her voice through the violin, and now she knew that no matter where life took her, she would always have the music. In the weeks that followed, Olivia continued to grow as a musician. She joined the school's music ensemble, performing with other students who shared her love of music. The teachers continued to support her, and Mrs. Collins encouraged her to audition for more competitions and performances. Olivia didn't know where this path would lead, but she was no longer afraid to follow it. She knew that her journey with the violin was just beginning, and that filled her with hope for the future. One afternoon, as Olivia was leaving school, Mrs. Collins stopped her in the hallway. "Olivia, I have an idea. There's a music school in the city that offers scholarships to promising musicians. I think you could be a great fit." "What do you think?" Olivia's heart skipped a beat. A scholarship? The thought of studying music at a prestigious school seemed like a dream, something she had never dared to imagine. But now it didn't seem so impossible. She had already proven to herself that she could do things she once thought were out of reach. Maybe this was the next step in her journey. "I'll think about it," Olivia said, her voice filled with hope. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she had the power to shape it. As she walked home that evening, the familiar weight of the violin case in her hand, Olivia looked up at the sky. The stars were beginning to twinkle above, and for the first time in her life she felt like anything was possible. She had come so far, and there was so much more ahead of her. No matter what, she knew that she would always have the music to guide her. In the talent showcase, she was stronger now, more confident in her abilities. As the winter concert approached, Olivia practiced more than ever. She spent hours in the music room perfecting her piece. The piece she had chosen was challenging, but it was one that had become personal to her. It was a beautiful, emotional composition that captured everything she had felt over the past few months: the struggle, the self-doubt, and the eventual triumph. She had poured herself into it, and now she was ready to share it with the world. The night of the concert, Olivia felt the familiar nerves creep up again. The auditorium was packed, and she could feel the buzz of excitement in the air. She was standing backstage waiting for her turn when her father appeared beside Age, and the quiet work of fixing engines. But every step she took brought her closer to becoming the leader she knew she could be. At first, the engineers were skeptical. They had known her as the quiet, humble woman who had fixed the engine and offered a few helpful ideas here and there. But now she was expected to lead them, guide them through projects, make decisions that would shape their work. It was a big shift, and it wasn't something everyone accepted right away. Some of the more experienced engineers questioned her authority, unsure if she had the right skills to lead a team. Others were supportive, impressed by her technical knowledge and problem-solving skills. She spent long hours in the lab, meeting with the engineers, reviewing designs, and discussing the future of the company. She made sure to listen to their ideas, encouraging open communication and collaboration. She knew that the best solutions came from a team working together, not just from one person at the top. Slowly, she earned their respect, not because of her title, but because of her ability to connect with them, to understand the challenges they faced, and to find solutions together. One of the most difficult aspects of her new role was balancing the technical side of the work With the managerial side, she was still the same person who loved to fix things, to get her hands dirty. But now she had to step back and think about the bigger picture. She had to consider budgets, timelines, and team dynamics, things that had never been her concern before. At times it felt overwhelming, but she was determined to make it work. Every day she reminded herself why she was doing this. To prove that anyone, no matter their background, could make a difference if they were given the opportunity. As time went on, she began to feel more comfortable in her new role. She started to lead meetings with confidence, offering insights that others respected. The engineers began to see her not just as a former outsider, but as a leader who could bring fresh ideas to the table. They appreciated her honesty, her willingness to listen, and her unwavering commitment to the work. They admired the way she approached problems with a calm, analytical mind, and they started to rely on her judgment. One day, the CEO called her into his office again. It had been a few months since she had taken on the leadership role, and he wanted to check in on her progress. When she walked into his office, he was standing by the window, looking out at the city. He turned as she entered, a warm smile spreading across his face. "I've been watching you," he said, his voice calm but full of pride. "I can't tell you how impressed I am with how far you've come. You've really stepped into this role, and you've done it with grace and strength. I knew you had it in you." Her heart swelled with pride at his words, but she quickly tried to downplay it. "It hasn't been easy," she said, sitting down across from him. "I've had a lot to learn," the CEO nodded. "It's never easy when you're stepping into something new, but you've managed it, and I think you've done something even more important. You've brought out the best in your team. They respect you, not just because of your position, but because of the way you lead." She smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "I've learned a lot from them, too. They've been great to work with." The CEO leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about the future of this company, and I believe that you're not just going to be a leader here, you're going to be a force for change. You've got the vision, the skills, and the determination to take this company to the next level." Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" He smiled again, his eyes twinkling. "I think you're ready for something bigger. I'm offering you a more senior leadership position, one where you'll be responsible for shaping the future of the company, leading major projects, and guiding the next generation of engineers." For a moment, she was speechless. It was more than she had ever imagined. She had already been given the chance to lead a team, but now she was being asked to take on an even bigger role. The responsibility felt daunting, but a part of her knew that this was exactly where she was meant to be. "I don't know what to say," she finally whispered. "This is a huge step." The CEO's smile softened. "I know it's a big decision, but I've seen the way you handle challenges, and I believe you're ready for this. It's time to take your place at the top, to guide this company into the future." She sat there for a moment, processing everything he had said. Her mind raced with thoughts of what it would mean. More responsibilities, more challenges, but also more opportunities to make a difference. She thought about all the people who had doubted her when she first started, and how far she had come since then. She had proven herself not only to the engineers, but to herself as well. Now it was time to take the next step. "I accept," she said, her voice steady and sure. The CEO's face lit up with pride. "I knew you would." As she left his office, her thoughts were filled with excitement and anticipation. She had come so far, from a quiet young woman who had once fixed engines in the background to a leader who was now shaping the future of the company. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. There was so much more to learn, so many challenges ahead. She would have to continue proving herself, continue pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, doubts, and tough decisions. But she was ready. She had already faced so much, and each challenge had made her stronger. Now, as she stood at the threshold of a new chapter in her career, she knew that she had the tools, the skills, and the mindset to succeed. As she walked down the hallway, she paused for a moment, looking out the window at the city below. The future seemed vast, full of possibilities, and for the first time, she truly believed that she was ready to take it on. She thought about her father, who had always believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. He had taught her that anything was possible if she worked hard enough, if she stayed true to herself. Now it was time to prove that his faith in her had been well placed. The young woman walked forward with a newfound sense of confidence, ready to lead, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She wasn't just fixing engines anymore. She was shaping the future. As the months went by, the young woman found herself growing more and more comfortable in her new role. She had accepted the challenge to lead the company, and each day brought new opportunities to prove herself. With each decision, each project, she felt herself becoming more confident, more capable. What had once seemed like an overwhelming responsibility was now something she embraced wholeheartedly. She had started out with little more than a passion for solving problems and a desire to make a difference. Now she was leading a team of engineers, driving innovation and overseeing some of the company's most ambitious projects. The work was intense, but it was rewarding. Every time they overcame an obstacle, every time a new design came to life, it felt like a victory, not just for the team, but for her as well. But leadership wasn't without its struggles. As the company grew, so did the challenges. There were disagreements among team members, tight deadlines, and moments when everything seemed to fall apart. The pressure of being responsible for so much weighed on her. And there were days when she doubted herself, when she wondered if she was truly cut out for this. One of the most difficult challenges came when the company decided to take on a new project, an ambitious plan to create a completely sustainable engine, one that could be used in various industries from transportation to energy production. It was a project that would change the game, not just for the company but for the world. The potential impact was enormous, but the risks were just as high. The young woman knew that if they succeeded, they would set a new standard for the entire industry. But if they failed, the consequences could be devastating. She gathered her team together for the first meeting. The engineers, all brilliant in their own right, were eager to get started. But as they discussed the scope of the project, it became clear that they were facing more challenges than they had anticipated. The technology they were aiming to develop was groundbreaking, but it had never been done before. There were no roadmaps, no clear path to follow. It was a project that required innovation at every step. As the team spoke, the young woman felt a sense of responsibility settle over her. She knew that this project had the potential to shape the future, but she also knew that there was a lot of pressure on them. The weight of the expectations, both from the CEO and from the world outside, was heavy. But she also knew that this was their chance to make a real impact. "We're going to face setbacks," she said, standing at the front of the room. "We're going to make mistakes. But that's okay. What matters is how we learn from them, how we keep pushing forward. This is a challenge, but it's one we're ready for, and we're going to do this together."